Welcome back to Backroom Talk. This season, we're bringing you behind-the-scenes conversations with awesome coaches shaping the future of fitness. I'm your host, Candace Dixon, CMO of OPEX and CoachRx. In this episode, I sit down with Coach Emil Ndekezi as he shares his inspiring transition from teacher to successful full-time coach. Emil dives into how he built his coaching business through genuine connections, word-of-mouth referrals, while integrating modern coaching tools like CoachRx to enhance his practice. He walks us through the evolution of his coaching approach, especially when working with younger athletes, and how he creates value beyond the one-on-one sessions that he conducts. What really shines through is his commitment to being intentional, from how he approaches each client relationship to building his career and to continually developing his coaching practice. Whether you're a career coach or thinking about coaching as your next move, this episode is packed with insights that will put you into action. All right, let's jump into my chat with Emil. So not to make you blush or anything, but I'm going to start with this awesome post that I found from your gym in December. And the caption in this post kicks off with, in less than a year, Coach Emil has gone from starting with 0 clients to managing a wait list and a fully booked schedule of dedicated athletes. And then it goes on to explain like how challenging this has been for other coaches in, I don't know if it's in the same gym or in the city, yeah. But wow, that's awesome. So tell me what's been going on.
Yeah. So one of the things that was really, really important for me so I think I haven't talked about this before, but before I became a full-time coach, I was a high school teacher for like 7 years. And so I got to this point where I'm like, hey, I was kind of like disillusioned with the job. And so I was always coaching on the side. And then I decided to go into full-time coaching. So in my last year, probably like my last year, 6 months of as a teacher, I started CCP at the same time. Honestly, like to a large degree, like even though I credit a lot of the systems that I have for like working with my athletes, getting athletes, making the process really, really seamless to the CCP program. And like, yeah, it's really just word of mouth has been really, really useful, like referrals. I've been working on different little projects, such as like working with younger athletes, because I realized that that's a space which not a lot of intention goes into towards, and not a lot of people feel comfortable doing. And so I'm just really leaning into that and just like finding as many opportunities to learn, to connect with other coaches, to just do the best job I can with my people. And that has branched out to lots of referrals. And now to this point where it's like, I'm really, really thankful in that I'm at the point where it's like, my list is full, and now there's like people who are waiting to come on. And so just like a lot of intention with like doing the very best I can with the people right in front of me. And that's really mushroomed out. And I'm really, really thankful for that.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. I guess let's go backwards, like to the beginning. Where did your passion for fitness start, and how did that lead you to like even start coaching part-time?
Yeah. I played sports growing up. So I played soccer quite a bit. And so I was always kind of moving. In university, I started doing some strength training and like, just going in, just like bro splits, nothing super serious. And as I left university, I think for me, one of the big things was I wanted to keep training. I wanted to keep being fit, but I wanted to have a lot more efficiency to what it is I'm doing, a lot more like systemization to what it is I'm doing. So it really started largely with just like practicing on myself and just like making sure that I was able to make fitness a part of my life, really, when I was like living like a busy life and just like still want to train. And so as a result of that, when I got those systems in place, it's actually interesting because there was a year, maybe 2017, where I almost only did calisthenics. So like just like basically calisthenics only. And I was able to make quite a lot of progression. And so at that point, when other people started like asking questions, like, oh, like asking questions here and there. And so for me, it was just one of those things where in helping other people, I began to learn a little bit more about fitness myself. And then I got to a point where, as I said, near the end of my teaching career, I started coaching on the side. And then through just I met a lady who owned a strength conditioning center in the city I was living in, and I started coaching there on the side. And then I got to this point where it's like I was doing both teaching and coaching at the same time. And I was like, if I just keep doing both of these, because my personality, Candace, like I really like to be like all in. And I was just like, if I'm all in on both things, I'm just going to burn myself out. Like I can't do both things all in all the time. And so I decided to gravitate towards coaching, and one of the best decisions in my life.
What were you teaching?
I was taught social studies. So I think that's the US, it's called civics. Is that called? Studies and PE, or physical education.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah.
And you never had the urge to get into like coaching team sports for the school that you were working for?
I did. So I coached soccer. I coached soccer for that team, and I helped out with them. But
Awesome.
As much as I like team sports, I like the strength and conditioning part of it more than like, it's so interesting because now I work with younger athletes, but I don't coach them like the sport itself. I do the strength and conditioning section, and I like that more than I do coaching the team sport itself.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So when you said you went through a phase of just focusing on calisthenics for yourself, was that by choice or by like limitation to not having a facility to train in?
Yeah, it was largely the first. So it was largely, I moved to a new city. I didn't really know the gyms around, so I was just like working on it in like parks for a while. Because the weather here was nice at the time. We're not Phoenix, so right now it's really cold. But it was a necessity thing, which eventually became a passion. And to this day, I still include lots of like calisthenics into what it is that I do.
Yeah, I noticed you were doing like this very long, I guess, programming test, right? On what you're calling a minimalistic training approach, and so maybe share a little bit about that journey and the program that you've been focused on.
Yeah. So obviously, like I enjoy having access to like a full gym, full equipment. But one of the things that's really, really important is some people have been reaching out to me and say, "Hey, Emil, I love the information that you're sharing, but I either don't have a lot of time, I can't train for an hour, or I don't have a lot of equipment. So all I have is a couple of dumbbells and bands." And one of the things that I wanted to do was I wanted to almost like challenge myself for like a month, where I would limit myself to the equipment that those people had. And that's why I asked like, "Hey, what kind of equipment do you guys have?" And people told me some kettlebells, dumbbells, bands, just a bench. And just like, hey, I want to show people that you don't have to have access to a fully stocked gym with trap bars and sleds and all this stuff. And so for me, that's just one of the things where I wanted to make fitness as approachable as possible. And I decided later in the fall of last summer, fall of 2024, to start working on that program. And it led to me finishing up, and now I want to release that at the start of this year. Just give people, a lot of people want to move, but they don't know where to start. They feel kind of overwhelmed by a big conventional gym. And so I wanted to show people that you can make it happen with pretty limited equipment.
Yeah, absolutely. Is that something that you're running through CoachRx?
No, I wanted to that's actually something that I'd spoken to, I think it was Ashley, about, and I didn't know, having a hard time automating the send out. So I was like, I made the PDF, but I was having a hard time with that. But I'm actually working on a different project, which I'm going to do via CoachRx. So.
Yeah, you could just go into your programs library and build out the program, and then add it to your storefront, and then anyone can sign up to the program, and it'll auto assign them to that, however you set it, if it's evergreen or if it's a fixed time period, and it'll just release, and you can say how many days in advance you want them to be able to see. So you could digitize it too outside of the PDF.
Yeah, that's the idea of that's actually something that I'm sort of testing out right now. The idea of making how do I describe it? It's kind of like a subscription model of training, which would be via CoachRx, where they would have access to like a week or a month at a time, and people would essentially have a chance to train, kind of doing a similar program to the one I'm doing. Because that's one of the things I find is like, I love the hyper personalization, but I also want to give people an option that's a little bit more generalized. So I'm testing that out via CoachRx.
Awesome. And so most of your coaching now is done in person in the gym.
Yeah, in person, a couple of online clients, remote clients. Everything is via CoachRx, like my online guys, my online people. And I have a couple of people who are hybrid. So they see me once or twice a week, and then the rest of the time they are online hybrid.
So you're using like a full OPEX method for those clients you're doing one-to-one. So they're in the gym with you, but then you're also in the app with them.
100%. 100%. One of the girls who just started working with me, maybe 4 6 weeks ago. She was amazed at CoachRx. She's like, the level of accountability in this app is crazy. She's like, it's astonishing. She's like, did you like, are you? Because like it's interesting because it feels in many ways kind of like like really personalized. She's like, are you the one like sending out these little messages at the top? I'm like, those are preset into the app. She's like, this feels so personalized. Like it's incredible.
It's relevant to everyone, right? But a lot of
Yeah,
what you put in there for her, all of her prescriptions, whether they're exercise or lifestyle, very personalized. So
yeah,
that's probably why she feels it. And just those little touches that the app gives on its own
yeah.
support that. But that's all you. We can't take credit for that. So you have always executed with like a full, like, let's meet this person, do an intake, initial consult, go through assessment, and then start programming and refining over time. Or I guess tell us about your approach when you're working with new clients.
Yeah. So I would say in the last year and a half, that's definitely been the case. But one of the things that really drew me towards CCP in the first place was when I first initially started coaching, it was just kind of just figuring things out. And so I remember when I first joined the CCP program, one of the things that Carl asked is like, what exactly do you want? Are you wanting to get out of the program? And for me, it was a system. Like it was a system that I could use start to finish, uh, intake, ongoing assessment, consults, and all that, and all in one space. So um, after going through CCP, I already had CoachRx, and I was sort of using it just like without the CCP information before. But now that I have it, and it's a lot more integrated. Basically, yeah, intake is I do intake, I do a, a body movement work, and we just go through ongoing assessments. And yeah, so it's pretty much I pretty much use the OPEX model for a lot of what
That's amazing. So I didn't know that about you. What year was it that you took CCP?
I started in say start. I started in July of 20. Wait, that'd be July of 23. July of 20. Yeah, I think either July of 23 or yeah, July of 2023.
And how did you find CoachRx before CCP? Because normally I would say, well, I think that's happening more commonly now, right?
Yeah,
Because it's been out for a while. But in the beginning, it was like we only launched it for CCP coaches, right? It was
yeah,
very much a beta for about a year and a half.
yeah,
And then we opened it up, but it was still a lot of people were discovering CoachRx through our education on the OPEX
yeah,
side. Now it's the reverse, like your scenario where they're coming in because they see CoachRx and this thing, and they get in there and they're like, wow, I know I'm not maximizing
yeah,
all these features. I got to learn the education side of this so I can maximize the features. But
yeah.
you're the first person I've actually talked to who's been that use case.
Yeah. So what happened was initially I first came across OPEX like right off the bat when I was not yet coaching. So I was doing my own thing, just like my own fitness. And I came across a coach. I don't know if there was an OPEX gym in the town that I lived in. And there was a coach who I guess he worked there at that OPEX gym. And I always see him with the OPEX shirt. And like and I he would work there, and then sometimes he'd be doing his own thing at the gym that I trained at. We were chatting, and I was like, and it seemed like he was a really nice guy. And so I was talking to him about a lot about stuff, a lot about the way he approached the coaching, and I was really interested in how intentional that he was every time I would watch him coach his clients. And I was like, hey, like and just asking questions. And he's like, he told me about like the OPEX before. I was like, oh, that's cool. He's like, yeah, they have a lot of like free resources you can like check out. And so I went to the website and I just started just like binging a bunch of like the free guides, whether it's like on tempo or on assessment. So it's really interesting, Candice. I was kind of doing the body before I heard of CCP. Like I was kind of doing like the assessment before I even knew of CCP. And so he went through like, I looked at a bunch of the free guides, and at the end of every free guide, there was like that section where it talks about like, hey, you want to learn more? Check out the CCP program. And it was always like percolating in the back of my head. But then as I was transitioning out from teaching to full-time coaching, I was like, I need, I the idea of I need to explore this more. And then I decided that summer, it's like, hey, I decided to sign up for CCP, and I got into it. So it was kind of like seeing another coach do it, hearing and seeing some of the things he was doing, binging a bunch of the free guides, and then boom, there it is.
Crazy. So I think for a lot of people, because that happens, I think most people start their fitness journey, obviously focus on their own fitness, and they learn and evolve and grow. And then they want to, have fulfillment through sharing that gift with other people, and they have interest in coaching. So for you in that scenario, was there a risk assessment that you went through in your mind of like, I know you said you started part-time, but even just taking that first step to start coaching, like there's a risk there because it's pulling you away from your core career. And I'm sure there's an investment in the education, all those things. Like what was that thought process like in your mind?
It was initially scary because I was moving from a profession that is, even though I was not, I was starting to lose a passion for it. It was very safe in that it was kind of what I knew I'd gone to school for. But I think for me, it was one of those things, Candice, where I was like, hey, I've got a really big passion for coaching. And this utilizes a lot of the things that drew me into my first professional teaching, interacting with people, watching them get better, teaching. And I think for me, it was just one of those things where I thought I could always go the rest of my life and wondering what if I had done this, and like what if I had made this plunge. And I'm just not the kind of person that wants to be living in regret for what it is that I could or couldn't have done. And so for me, it was scary. And I was initially like, gosh, like, did I make a mistake? Like, did I make a mistake? But for me, it's just working as hard as I can through the process, and just like making sure I left no stones unturned. I think for me, that's been the big thing. If I do my absolute best and put as much effort as I can into it, I'll be happy with it. And so doing that, and it's worked out really, really well. Yeah. I just decided to just take the plunge and just didn't want to be guessing. Like it was a massive change, but I just don't want to live with regrets.
I feel you.
Yeah.
From a mentorship perspective, did you initially like seek out mentorship, or you mentioned this coach that you came across and just had a great conversation with? Yeah. But did that evolve into mentorship, or what mentors have you had throughout your career that have kind of helped cheer you along the way?
Yeah, he was massive. When I moved to Edmonton, the city I'm living in now, just getting into contact with as many like older coaches, people who have been in the game a little bit longer. In the facility that I work at, there's a lot of coaches who have been coaching for much longer than myself. And so just asking as many questions as possible, just having a certain ability, and just like being willing to learn literally from anyone. And yeah, I think one of the tough things is, if you are a person, for myself, who puts a lot of like effort into what it is that I do, it's interesting because feedback is very useful, but in some cases it can be hard to take. In that when you take feedback, there's the understanding that you have to contend with the fact that there's things that you may have done that good intention didn't work that well. And so for me, learning from other coaches and getting as much feedback from my clients and athletes has been really, really useful. Like asking someone, even after I put a lot of effort into something, hey, is this working? Like, how does this line up with what it is that you're trying to accomplish? And sometimes you end up with egg on your face because like you put a lot of effort in something and someone's like, this isn't working the way you thought it would. And so getting as much information from the clients and athletes that I work with has been incredibly useful. And just like learning as much from other coaches. So been asking tons and tons of questions. Really good.
Yeah, super important. I agree. With the younger population that you're working with now, I guess, how much are you prescribing lifestyle and behavior prescriptions with them? And like, what has that been like? I think it's something that's more pop culture now. Obviously, we were talking about BLGs 25 years ago with James, and we were like, those OPEX guys, they're just not sexy. They talk about such boring stuff, right? But now all of the world is like, hey, we need to think about sleep and recovery and the daily rhythm and all the things that the BLGs stand for. Yeah. But I wonder, how is the younger generation that you're coaching now, are they receptive to that thinking and the education you're providing them there?
Yeah. I think yes, in that I think younger athletes have got a different motivation to what it is that they're training for. So for them, it's a lot of what they do is performance based. So their goals are I want to be a better hockey player. I want to be a better volleyball player. And it's a very simple conversation. It's just like, hey, we train hard, but if you want to be able to recover and be back the next day and give a this good effort again, these are some of the things that we need to start implementing. And so it's very much when it comes to like, it's also a conversation that has to occur as well. So informing parents and just letting them know about like what it is that is important for their kid to give the best effort is really, really important. And even just like having little conversations of like, hey, when you're hanging out with like, even like, hey, like how was your sleep over the summer break? Like, is it pretty consistent? Are you trying as much as possible to have a set, like, go to sleep at the exact same time? So with younger athletes, like we're talking, because the vast majority of the younger athletes I coach are, I'm guessing, 12 to 15. And so a lot of it comes down to conversations you're having with the parent, and also just like little nuggets that you're dropping in within the session, because for them, their whole thing is, I want to get better at this thing. And so correlating those BLGs to what it is that they're doing in order to them to hit this specific performance target that they're aiming for is really, really important.
Yeah. It's like, is that performance goal just as important as late night gaming, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So is there any like standout learning in the last year or so from your clients?
Yeah.
Like, 'cause I mean, you guys get to work with so many people, such a variety of
Yeah.
personalities. I guess, are there any big lessons that your clients have been able to give you?
Biggest lessons. I think one of the things which I've sort of learned is, how do I describe it? Separating what I think success looks like versus what they think success looks like. And this is a conversation that I think I'm getting a lot better at having, because when someone comes in, let's say week one, their objective is, hey, I've had people say I want to lose weight or something like that. And so maybe that's the target for, because I have an athlete that I work with. I think it's been almost a year now. When he first started working with me, his big thing was there was an event that he was training for. He wanted to be ready for it, and obviously just like get back into training. And so for this event, there's a high amount of like relative strength that's needed. Obviously, he wanted to lose a little bit of body weight to just like get strong, and like he made incredible progress towards that, like lost a substantial amount of weight. But this year coming up, the goal isn't the same. So he has another event that he's gone for. But for him, it's losing weight. He's got pretty happy where he's at. And for him, it's just like, hey, I just improve my endurance on some of these specific events. So for me, one of the big things that I've learned is I need to be having that regular conversation with people, because our goals change, your goals change in training, my goals change in training. And if you're not having that regular conversation, you might think that you are reaching success for a certain person, but that's not their goal anymore. And so I think for me, just like learning, and this is why, like, I think the monthly consults in CoachRx are really, really useful. You just like talking to them every month and just be like, hey, like this is what we're aiming for. We're aiming for quite a couple of months. Like you still resonate with this goal, and having those conversations has been really, really, has been an important lesson, because I've had instances where I feel like that's what we're aiming for, but then you check in with someone, they're like, that's not, like that doesn't resonate with me anymore. And understanding why that is really, really important.
Sometimes people don't necessarily want to admit that, right?
Yeah.
They think that that's a negative if that goal doesn't resonate with them, and like they think like it's not a good thing for their goals to evolve, or for them to realize that that's not important to them and they have a different priority. That's cool. Are you also doing weekly check-ins as well as the monthly consults? And how do you structure like what happens in your weekly check-in versus your consult?
Yeah. The weekly check-ins are a bit more informal. Usually within a session, we just like check in how they're doing, how they recover, how they're feeling with those movements. The monthly check-ins are more so sending out a survey questionnaire by CoachRx, and just like having them fill that out, and then I get that information, especially for those athletes that are remote. That's just important as a way to just like see where they're currently at. So I found that the weekly check-ins were really, I was able to do that a lot more smoothly when I first started, when they had that many clients on my roster. But obviously with an expanded list, it's become a little bit more informal with the weekly, but then the monthlies are more formal.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. But are you using the automated weekly check-in form that you can create the template for in CoachRx?
No, what I do is I have that function on, probably should be using that more. I have that fun. I have a thing that I send them via the messaging, just like where you can send a message to all your clients, and then they just fill that in through the messaging.
I see. And then you just like are
Yeah.
updating that in your client notes and then like using that data when you have the consult.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. That's cool. How are you balancing like business and like building your business and your brand and full-time coaching and then life?
Yeah. I think this is something that obviously is something that I've had to kind of like learn on the fly. Obviously, like, because I think my coaching business has gone quite a lot faster than I thought it would. So just like learning. Although I think for me the big thing is I have a cap on how much mental space I can provide, or how much like of myself I can provide. And once I hit that cap, just making it clear to anyone who wants to work with me that, hey, at this moment, I'm not able to like take on more clients, and just like making sure I protect that space. Having days and times off where it's like, for example, Tuesdays, just making sure that I don't go in until quite late in the day. So that's my day when I can just like relax, get a workout, do my own workout, whatever I want. I need to sleep in a little bit, just like do what I need to. And one of the thing for me growing the business, one of the things that I'm sort of looking into, and with the use of like CoachRx, is creating products more so instead of just services, because with products I'm able to help people without necessarily having to be online with them all the time, kind of thing.
Yeah. Have you played with video or mostly just the PDF stuff?
PDF stuff. What do you mean video? What do you mean by
Like education through video or like a video course or?
yeah, that's interesting. That's something that I haven't yet. Is that a function that's set into CoachRx or not so, or it's just?
Well, yes and no. Obviously, depending on how you wanted to set it up, you have all the Loom integration. So if you were creating a lifestyle prescription type program, or you were creating a training program and you were using all the Loom features, you could embed those videos and just like sell that as a product that way. But also just on your storefront, you could offer your PDFs and any video course that you hosted somewhere else.
Okay, yeah. I've made a storefront, and I've just been kind of playing around with it, and that's something that I think I need to. I don't know if is it yourself or Ashley who handles most of that stuff.
I can definitely help for sure, but Ashley's super deep in it. She's the person handling all the back end stuff with as well. So she's like the go between the coaches and the devs and making sure everyone's happy.
And I think that's I remember when I initially thought of the idea of creating like a minimalist training program. I remember I talked to her about that. I was having some issues just like understanding some of like the integration thing pieces. I think playing around with it, starting to figure out a little bit more, and that's something that 2025, I definitely want to create some more pieces for that storefront. And
it's cool that you're at this place now where it's like the business is at a healthy enough spot where you can take time, like you said, like your Tuesdays, and like have these more creative blocks of a good portion of the day where you're just thinking about how else can I bring value that isn't like trading time for money.
Yeah.
Do you think, and I'm sure you see this too with the younger athletes, because you only get to have those sessions with them in the gym, but then there's probably such a desire to learn more outside of the gym with you. That's probably a great way to just provide more value to them as well, right?
Yeah. Oh, and I think one of the most rewarding things I love working with kids is seeing them gain autonomy over the thing we talked about a lot, CCP. Gain autonomy over their training. Like there's so many times where I'm like, we're running a drill, I'm running some drills with some athletes, some younger athletes, and the cool thing is like, hey, like they're doing something. They're like, hey, last week when I did this, I noticed this thing about the way that I was moving through this. That like, for example, we're doing some sprinting stuff. They're like, Was I taking those bigger projected steps that we talked about last week? Just like seeing them kind of just like take it on board, and just like when you see a 13-year-old like remember what it is we talked about like 2-3 weeks ago, and like them trying to implement it, like that's like one of the things that just absolutely lights me up. I love that. I love that so much.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I know, for anyone, right? But like with how many distractions and how digitally
Yeah,
native and zoned in they are,
yeah, yeah.
have them have light bulb moments is pretty cool.
Yeah, it's awesome.
So what do you think been, I know it's been a shorter time that you've been full-time coaching, but what's been like the most rewarding milestone that you think you've hit so far?
I think for me the most rewarding milestone is I think there when I first started coaching, there's like a I don't understand. It's almost like there's like a grind that starts. It's just like the idea of like, because like I went into full time coaching when I was 30 years old. So like, I was talking with a friend of mine. It felt like I was 21 again, because I had an entire career, and then I go into full time coaching at 30 years old, and it was kind of tough. It's just like I'm out of college again. So there's very much like a grindy, like you just got to work as hard as you can to get as much as you can. And so I think for me, the most rewarding thing was to get to this point in my career where I feel really comfortable with where I'm at in terms of business, financially, and just like have I don't feel like this like I gotta grind as hard as I can. I still work pretty hard. Like, the idea of I feel comfortable financially and in terms of my time. I think for me, that's definitely the most rewarding thing. Coming from a spot where, yeah, a year and a half ago, it felt like starting from square one once again. Anyways,
Absolutely. And that creates another level of stress, right? When you're like,
yeah,
your mind's trying to figure out and associate all the things that you're learning with how you're going to implement them, how you're going to make them your own. So you have to get to a space where you're like, all right, I have a system that I've learned, but it's now mine, and it's working, and clients are coming in and they're having results, and that's feeding more clients. Like that's pretty awesome.
yeah.
So what are you motivated by now? What's the next milestone you want to be your most rewarding?
Yeah, I think for me the next milestone is getting to a point where my I always see myself in many ways as I think in-person coaching is something that I'm genuinely really passionate about. I think for me the next milestone is getting to a point where a good chunk of my coaching business, I'm able to coach people around the world without necessarily always being like on like either in person or online with them at the exact time they're training. So just that we talked about the idea of like products is really, really important. For me, that's the big milestone. Creating something that can like creating a way for people to access my coaching without necessarily me being there all the time is I think the big next coaching milestone. And definitely growing my business, and especially when it comes to younger athletes. I think that's an area of mine that I'm really, really passionate about. And I think that's something I personally don't know if that's being done with that much intention generally. And so that's something that I want to keep doing and provide that service for parents and kids.
Yeah, I love that. How, I guess, and the new generation of coaches coming up, it obviously, like with anything, digital is native to their lives. So, they might come up and think, oh, I want to be an influencer. And that might be a very real career path for a lot of these young ones that are coming, right?
Yeah.
But in the coaching space, it's like they see living the coaching dream as like, oh, I work from my laptop. I can travel anywhere. I just make fitness content and
Yeah.
sell some programs. But you, I mean, obviously you're older, more mature, and you came from education where you're like, okay, I want to make this shift, but I'm going to intentionally go in person first and spend time as what we would call in the trenches,
Yeah.
right? Like gaining the knowledge before I think about scale or going online. And I guess like that path, why did you make that choice? And I guess what did you learn from being in the trenches?
Yeah. Why I made that choice? Because I think for me, the idea of coaching is I was having a conversation with one of the fellow coaches last night, and I said, for me, I think one of the reasons why I got into this canvas is I want people to be better. I want people to make progress. And so, I'm not knocking anyone who follows a different path and just like maybe goes down the influencer route. But for me, my whole thing is I want people to get value from what it is that they're paying for, make progress. And so for me, my big thing is I wanted to be in person because I want to see people actually progress instead of just like a number entering a dashboard. It's like, oh, look at that, like just like another person. And I want to have people actually progress and see progression. Now, one of the things that I've really, really benefited from, why I'm really thankful I chose that path, is it's given me insight for what someone online experiences. What I mean by that is, I don't know if you've ever done this where you've purchased a program from someone and you do it and you're like, I'm not sure this person actually did this program, or like a person has actually done this program before. I'm not sure how this is, like the way that this is structured, or it says this workout should take 20 minutes. It actually takes like an hour and a half. And it's just like, I think sometimes when you have no experience with people in person, you don't actually know how it plays out with the person in the gym. So for me, like there are times when I'm working with someone in person, I'm like, hey, they're having a really hard time transitioning in the superset pairing, or they're having a hard time with like every time they do this is not happening. Every time, this was something that I realized a while ago. We were working on some superset pairings with someone, and I was like, hey, these two pairings, as much as it looks good on paper, every time I implement it, the second one just doesn't work that well. And so having that experience and seeing that in person, then when I'm working with someone online, I can take some of those learnings that I've seen like with my eyes one-on-one and offer a better service. So I think for me, working in person has allowed me to kind of problem solve or react to possible issues that I might see a little bit later. And instead of just like looking at things on paper and saying, wow, this looks fantastic, not actually knowing what that's going to play out with when the person experiences it on their own.
Absolutely. And I know you just have a general passion for movement and movement quality in general, but that's something I think is more challenging when it comes to the remote setting, because unless you really know faults, points of performance, cueing, really understanding and dissecting performance challenges, being able to communicate that digitally is a lot more challenging, and also getting the client to understand what they need to change and how they need to correct movement without physical cueing, right? There's so many other challenges that come into play.
Yeah, 100%.
I was actually having this conversation with my husband yesterday walking. He's also a strength coach. And he was like, imagine if you only had 50 to 100 words in your vocabulary, how challenging it would be for you to communicate. He's like, most people, they don't have a large library of movements they go through on a regular basis. So when you tell them to go squat or put a barbell on their back and move, they have to reference the vocabulary they have. And if they don't have much, it's very challenging.
This is a thought that I've had a while ago, and I think I talked to someone about that. Is I think as people who've been training for years, there's so many things that we just take for granted. I think your husband talked about that. Like, for example, like I was talking to someone, but when someone tells me to brace, like that's not like that's automatic. I know what I'm doing. But when I always have this conversation with a lot of athletes. I'm like, hey, when I tell you to brace your core, like what are you actually doing? And so I think it's like people, you realize like, oh, someone's like, oh, I didn't breathe through that entire set. You're like, oh, and so I think there's just so many things that we just take for granted, and then you just realize like when someone's coming in without that same like training age and training experience, they're just like so. Yeah, I think what Trump said is really interesting. Like there's so many things where I'm like, I hinge for someone, especially we're working with like kids. You have them hinge and they're just like their back totally bends over. It's just like they give a neutral spine. It's just like what? Like, that's just not something that registers in their head. And so I think it's really interesting. Just that idea of we have just this luxury of this massive vocabulary that a lot of people just don't have, and just finding a way to connect. And this is one of the things I find working with with kids has been really, really fun is creating restraints for movement. What I mean by that is like, if it's an adult, I can tell them, we can break down a hinge. I can do a couple drills and they'll probably figure it out at some point. But with a kid, one of the things I need to do, I need to be creative about is like, how do I get them naturally into this position without me talking too much? And that's something that's been really, really helpful with working with younger kids. Teaching a 14-year-old how to hinge is one of the challenging things, one of the most challenging things I've ever done. But it's been very, very, very useful to transfer over.
Yeah, I was listening to a podcast the other day related to this subject, and they were just going over the difference between internal and external cueing and how, as a coach, not to get caught up in being so technical and nerdy because your clients don't care about the anatomy you're referencing to them. They may not even know, that they need to supinate the wrist and what that means. But if you give them some kind of analogy or, real life external example that references the movement, they're likely going to connect to it. So keeping it simple versus trying to make yourself sound smart, right? And I think there's such a crew, and maybe everyone goes through that cyclical pattern in their career where they're like, they've absorbed all this education and they want to showcase it, the knowledge that they've gained. So they go that more technical kind of cueing route, but then their clients are like, wait, what? And you got to go backwards and simplify it again.
Exactly. Yeah. What someone yesterday, we're doing some lat pull downs. They're like, man, my what they say? They say they're pointing at their biceps and my triceps are doing are going crazy. It's so interesting.
Oh, that's awesome. So when it comes to social media, I know you mentioned that influencers obviously not your main priority, but you do create content. You do educate a lot through the content that you're putting out in social. So what has that journey been like for you?
Yeah, I think for me, one of the things that I'm intentionally, I think with social media, it's one of those things where I think there's a certain intentionality that comes into it, because it's one of those things where I don't want to I don't want to pigeonhole myself into a certain thing, that's a certain bucket that I can't come out of. What I mean by that is I never wanted to go down the influencer route, because it's one of those things where it's like, I don't know, personally, some people can pull it off. It's this treadmill that I just don't want to be on, kind of thing. And so for me, one of the things that has been really important is just giving as much useful information as possible. Like the way I view my social media is quite interesting, because I don't, how do I describe it? I don't generally view it as a way to get clients for the most part. Like, it happens. Like, there's people who see stuff on social media and they're like, hey, they want to work with me. That's totally cool. I view it as a way for people to start conversations, which could eventually lead to that. But I think for me, my big thing is just like creating as much education as possible and just like making fitness as approachable as possible, and like professionalizing fitness. What I mean by that is just like, yeah, I feel like there's a lot of influencers doing influencing things. I'm sure they're doing a great job for themselves, and I'm sure someone's benefiting from it. But for me, my big thing is I just want to provide as much knowledge and information as possible. And I've learned from other people posting stuff on social media, and I want to give people that information, because I know a lot of people aren't going to be reading anatomy books, strength and conditioning manuals. But I want to give them something that they can take with, start conversations with them, and maybe down the road it becomes a thing of generating a lot more business. But I find that right now a lot of my business tends to fail word of mouth, and pretty happy with that. But I just don't want to make myself. I don't want to create a brand for myself that I can't maintain, because I just don't have the I don't have the personality or the bandwidth to become an influencer. So I don't want to go.
I like that you use yourself as a test subject, right? And you really just document a lot of your own training and the things that you're learning and experimenting with, and obviously just living by example, right?
Yeah.
That's one of the most powerful things I think we know coaches can do, is just be that example of consistency and truly show that they're living the life and that their daily rhythm is set, and that consistency matters.
Yeah. 100%.
What if you had to go back and say, all right, Emil, a year ago, you're about to go through this journey. I already know what's going to happen. This is probably one of the bigger hiccups you're going to run into. Let's not do that. What would that thing be that you would tell yourself if you could start over again, that you would do differently?
I would say my biggest thing I would tell someone is be clearer to myself, and the people that I work with about values, to make sure the values align. Because I've had instances where either someone has started working with me, eventually maybe the relationship didn't, the coach relationship didn't necessarily proceed, but just like, because I think there's a value clash that occurs. And so I just think, be clear to myself and to other people about what my values, their values are, so that we make sure that we are fit. Because I don't want someone to become bitter and just like, hey, this guy, me and Emile don't necessarily match, or me becoming kind of disillusioned with coaching because I'm just in because I think when you're first starting, there's a very much of I just gotta get clients. And I think one of the things that I would tell myself is the process might be a little bit slower in getting those clients, but be really intentional on making sure that you and the people that you work with are aligned in values, because it's going to make it a much more fruitful relationship rather than you trying to pigeonhole yourself into what they value, or trying to twist their arm to align with what it is that you value.
Yeah. I know, obviously, because you've gone through CCP, we spend a lot of time going through that work to define values. But as you've gone through that work, even beyond CCP, what tips can you provide to just share with other coaches who may not know how to start that, or how to get clear on what their values are? What are some of the ways that you've been able to gain that clarity for yourself?
Yeah. I think for me in the realm of coaching, asking yourself what type of day or what type of coaching session gets you the most excited? What kind of days, coaching session, population gets you really, really excited and gravitating towards that, instead of just like, and I think I mentioned before, like, this was something that I spoke about with one of the guys who runs the facility that I work at, is like, when you're first starting, it is very much like, it does feel like, hey, I'll just take any. And I don't regret that, because I think it kind of forced me to figure out what it is that I enjoy doing. But I would say, take some time to think about what your ideal day session looks like and try to line that up. Because if not, I think coaching, like any other thing, can burn you out when you feel like, I don't connect with this. This is just me doing stuff because I have to. I feel like that'll burn you out. But just like reflecting on what an ideal day session looks like for you, and trying as much as possible either to create that or to gravitate towards that.
I love that. From a continuing ed standpoint, what are the things that you do to like stay inspired, stay fresh?
Number one, like, I think for me, obviously reading, obviously more, if you're able to take more courses, that's useful. Last year, was it last year? Yeah, 2023. I'm so confused about the years. Okay, I mean, 2024.
It is 25 already. It's crazy.
Yeah. Last summer, I went to, I had some friends who got into kettlebells a couple of years ago, and I used to work at a strength and conditioning center where a couple of the athletes there were certified by Strong First, and so I was really interested in some of the things that they're doing. So I've taken other certifications on like bodyweight training. So that's been, so just like, if you can travel or take courses, go for it. I think that's just been really useful. But talking to as many other coaches as possible. Myself, whenever I always tell people, I'm sure you're the same. It's like, people can always ask questions. I'll be glad to answer them as much as I can. Now, reaching out to other coaches, and just like, I think for me, the biggest continuing learning tool is putting into practice whatever it is that you are learning as soon as you can. There's some I purchased some courses and done the information and maybe sat on it for a couple of months, but when I apply it, then it becomes real. And it's just like, you can have all this information, but applying it as quickly as you can, whether on yourself or other people. I saw sometimes we'll test out different formats, different approaches with some of my athletes, and I'll let them know, hey guys, I'm just testing some stuff out, and I'll get some feedback off it. And so anytime you learn something, not just sitting on it and just like loving the ideas theoretically, but just like applying them as quickly as you possibly can is something that I would suggest.
I love that. You could spend months and weeks and however long just like going down the rabbit hole of consuming content. But is it really relevant? Is it accurate? You don't know until you start putting in the work. So I love that. It applies to every industry. In marketing, it's the same way, right? I talk to young marketers and they're like, how do you get started? It's like, a lot of it is trial and error. There's the art and there is the science, but a lot of it is you just have to execute and then learn from what happens and iterate. Same thing with fitness too, right? Oh, I love that. Is there any like go-to book or podcast or anything that helps you get through the day or the week and that you'd like to share?
Great question. So right now, my favorite coaching podcast is it's called CoachRx. It's have you heard of it?
Heard of it.
Yeah, I every Tuesday I'm on that. So I love it because it's basically like a mentorship kind of from like some of the best coaches in like strength and conditioning. Like basically almost any coach you can imagine is either on there or going to be on there. And I think that podcast has been, there's so many things that I've learned from just like listening to other coaches and like them reflecting on business, life. It's not always about coaching. Sometimes it's like life and what it is that they've learned. And instead of always learning from your own mistakes, learning from other people, that podcast is perfect. I enjoy it quite a bit.
I love you. Coach them
up. Yeah.
It's a good reco. Okay. This is awesome. I'm so excited that we're all going to get together with all of the ambassadors soon. I didn't mention Emile is one of our OPEX and CoachRx ambassadors. So I'm excited that we're all going to get together on a call at the end of next month and just have a jam session. You're the third episode that we're going to be releasing for these new Backroom Top Coach Spotlights. And I talked to Brandon Gallagher, who was the first one, and then Austin Cap was the second one. And the three of you guys are just such awesome representations of the OPEX values and mission, as well as coach. But the thing that is a common thread, which is brilliant because it's our mission as a company, which is elevating the value of the fitness coach. And it's so cool to see how the three of you, so unique in your approaches and focus, but all of you guys are so committed to just raising the bar. Like, what is the standard of a professional fitness coach? And you emulate it every single day. And it's so cool to be able to connect and catch up with you. So thank you for taking the time with me today.
Thank you so much.
Well, anything that you want to share with anyone for how to connect with you?
Yeah. Best way to connect with me is probably by Instagram. It's just training with Emile, training with Emile. I usually share some of the things I've been learning, some of the things I've been working on, some of the awesome things that my athletes have been working on. I always say that as much as possible, I like to learn from other people, share what it is that I've learned. I have lots to learn as well. I'm glad to share what it is that I have learned. I'm glad to just riff and just communicate with anyone. So that's probably the best place to reach me. And honestly, I'm so glad to be part of this big OPEX family. It's been one of the big honors and joys of my coaching career so far.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you.